traumatic brain injury is a leading cause of disability around the globe. TBI affects not only survivors, but also their families, friends, and caregivers, impacting millions daily. TBI is often life-changing, requiring daily management, but survivors need not be defined by their brain injury. There is hope for not just a good life, but a wonderful life after brain injury. That is why we at Cowichan Brain Injury Society are producing this series of videos to provide hope and understanding for new brain injury survivors, their friends, and families. With that in mind, we present our next film in this series.
My name is John Ronald, and I am a member of the Cowichan Brain Injury Society. I'm very lucky to be alive, and I'm very grateful for being alive. Well, I tell people that I was born on January 1st, 1904, but that would make me 120, so I'm lying. I was born on the 6th of April, 1957. I was born in Toronto, and when I was 15 months old, my father was transferred down to Mexico City. My childhood was wonderful. It was a very safe environment. I remember my first pet was a chicken, and I called her Cock-a-doodle-doo. I mean, I would just run after this chicken, and it was in the backyard. And I used to run after this chicken all the time, and I'd talk to the chicken and whatnot. And I just loved Cock-a-doodle-doo. And I was just absolutely distraught when Cock-a-doodle-doo went missing. And a couple of days later, I found out that I had Cock-a-doodle-doo for supper. The first time that I can say that I was really horrified was when I found out. I asked where Cock-a-doodle-doo was, and I'm sure it was a very awkward question. And when I finally realized that I ate Cock-a-doodle-doo for supper, it was bad. Then my dad was transferred to Cincinnati, Ohio in 1963, but my dad was then transferred again to Chicago. But then we did move back to Canada into our house in Montreal. And I remember we got back to Canada and I was thinking, my God, it's cold in Canada. The Montreal Expos had a new baseball team. My dad took my brothers and I to see the Chicago Cubs play the Montreal Expos. I was always a really avid baseball fan, and I'd always go to the Cubs games, and the Cubs were horrible. They were absolutely horrible, but they were my team, and so I loved going to see the Cubs. When I was a teenager and I had hair down to here, I was 14 years old, a very snotty teenage boy. Hair down to here, a really snotty, immature 14-year-old boy. I was with my dad and my two brothers, and we were at a Chicago Cubs game against the Montreal Expos, and I was hitting the head with a line drive foul ball going over 100 miles an hour. It was hit by Ron Fairley of the Expos, and Ken Holtzman was pitching for the Cubs. Home plate's over there, and the line drive foul ball came. My siblings and my father saw it coming, and they moved back. I was scoring, and so I didn't see it. And the ball, my brothers and my dad moved back. The ball went there. It hit me right in the head. Very serious left temporal, depressed skull fracture. And the one thing that I did feel was kind of a ripoff was it happened in the first inning, and so I didn't get to see the rest of the game. The left half of my skull was shattered. I was in a coma for a long time. I'm totally blind in the right half of each eye. I had to have 3 brain surgeries to keep me alive. Doctors did not expect that I would survive. They just don't have any explanation for it. Just a lot of very, very good luck. My mom would come every day to the hospital and she would talk to me and she would always tell me that she loved me. And she would always say, "Johnny, if you can hear my voice, squeeze my hand." And I never did. She talked to me and she'd hold my hand like I'm doing it now, with Mom's hand being in the bottom. And she said, "Johnny, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." And you can't really tell, but I gave the tiniest squeeze, just kind of like a mother talking to her baby. And Mom knew that I was going to live. And Mom cried and cried and cried because she knew that I was going to be alive. As I came out of the coma, it was just very slowly and gradually. And it went from, just squeezing her hand and Mom would keep coming back and talking to me, to opening my eyes, and then eventually to talking, but really not being able to talk very well at all. A nurse who was a real battle axe. If you think about someone who's really a no-nonsense type of person you wouldn't want to be near. Yeah, there was this battle axe. You talk about someone who just goes by the book. The first thing that happened, which made me so happy, was I saw my dog Daisy, our Labrador Retriever, and she jumped up on me. And I know my parents were horrified at that. I thought it was wonderful. Because my skull was shattered, the brain on the left was just exposed. And so that's why I had to wear the helmet all the time. I had to learn to do everything all over again. I had to learn to walk, I had to learn to read, I had to learn everything from scratch. Social skills, of which, I was just a horrible mess. But I had to learn absolutely everything all over again. Absolutely everything. Sometimes it would be very frustrating to a 14-year-old with a smashed up brain who does not understand. What bothered me the most was that my siblings were doing a lot more than I was. I remember before my head injury, I was always the first person that was picked on a baseball team. After my head injury, I was the very last person that was picked. So, emotion, like a lot of emotion. I was very insecure, and did not understand what had happened to me. Was also very angry. I had very, very severe anger management problems. You don't want to know about how angry I was. The behavior aspect was absolutely horrible. Like I said, I lied. I cheated. I lied about lying. And this is over years, right? I didn't accept myself. I didn't like myself. And I did not accept who I was. I thought I was a horrible person. I was a very envious person. I was jealous of my siblings, jealous of classmates. Yeah, I was a real mess. I was a total mess. And I was ashamed of myself and embarrassed. It took a long time. Honestly, it is really difficult to say because it just happens incrementally. I don't know if you've ever read the book On Death and Dying, but that book, On Death and Dying, it's about people who have like stage 4 cancer, and you go through the 5 stages of death and dying. But that was really kind of like what happened to me when I had my head injury. I had to go through that whole process of on death and dying, and it did take me a long time to accept what had happened to me. The fortunate part for me was that I lived. I try to look on things positively, and I tend to be a positive looking guy. So after I finished high school, and I'd gone from like an A student prior to my head injury to a C student to a D student finishing high school. And my parents said, you don't need to go on if it's too hard. We love you and we accept you for who you are. And I said, no, I want to. So not only did I not understand that you go through a big jump, a learning curve going from high school to college, but on top of that there's the reading, and on top of that you've got to change your brain so that the focus is on, you've got to study. And I didn't understand that. So then I went to college and I failed all sorts of courses. After the second year, and I kept failing courses, and my parents were saying, Johnny, you don't have to do this. So I stepped out of junior college for 6 months. And then I went to another college, and I started to learn, hey, there's something that's happening. And I did a lot better. Then I went to Concordia University in Montreal, and I really worked my butt off. And that's when it's kind of like the penny dropped. But I was thinking, man, oh man, I've really got to do a lot of work. Oh, I majored in finance at Concordia University, and I did very well. I was a B+ student. So I finished university, and I thought, this is great. I thought, well, with my finance degree, it'll be no problem. So I got a job with the Bank of Montreal. I lasted 1 month and I was fired. And then I got another job, and it was with a financial institution called the Canadian Commercial Bank, and you may not have heard of that place. I was fired. Or actually, I was given the choice to be fired or to quit, and I said, I'm gonna quit. I was not totally truthful with an employer. I never told them anything about my head injury or my blindness, or anything like that. I went to an employment agency, and it was called Employment Services for the Physically Disabled. But anyway, so I was a client for them to find a job. One of their staff members left, and I applied for a job there, and I was accepted, and I did a really good job because I love people. I'm very passionate when it comes to people who have disabilities. Well, you can kind of tell why. It was with them, I was working with them, that I decided I wanted to go back to university, because social work to me, you're working with people. You're working and you're caring with people. And I am a caring person. I went to Victoria, but it was hard. Going to university and UVic was a lot harder than when I was at Concordia. But I got involved with a youth group, and they were very accepting of me, and having those sorts of friendships really helped a lot. I had a really severe trauma when I was at UVic, and that was that I fell in love. And that's where I met my wife. Just being my wife and being a very caring, loving person. I know that I've got the strongest advocate, my wife. When I first came out, I had no interest in going to any brain injury group. So my wife said, John, there's this group, the Couch and Brain Injury Society. And I said, I don't think so. So my wife said, will you at least go once? And I said, okay, I promise you that I'll go one day. And then that's it.
I'll speed this up because I'll tell you what he did. He comes in. I'm telling you right now, don't bother talking to me. I'm only here because my wife said, and he's holding on his wheelchair. I'm only coming here because my wife told me I had to come, but don't bother talking to me. Before he left, he was trying to see how many days he could fit into his schedule. The first time that I remember seeing John, actually, he comes, and when he come in, I will never forget. And I'm a person that I have to use my hands. I opened up the door. He comes in with his walker, and he's just hobbling along. I'm telling you now, don't bother trying to get to know me. Don't ask me any questions. I'm only here because my wife made me come. But after that, I'm not coming back. So don't bother talking to me. By the time he left, he was trying to fit out how many times he could come to Couch Brain Injury to fit into his schedule. This was a man who was never going to come back. It was definitely a success. CBIS, which many people have now been coining CBIS, is Couch and Brain Injury Society. CBIS is built on a foundation of friendliness, and it is built using therapeutic recreation, which is using recreation as the rehabilitation tool. It doesn't feel like rehab because I'm laughing, I'm playing. Our drumming program, our music program, our singing art is making sure everybody uses both sides of their brain.
Let's do it. That is how it's done. That is how it's done. And that's how it's done.
That's how it's done.
And I actually was recently talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling her just about some of my experiences having had this very severe brain injury. A comment that she made that I had never even thought of before was that she said, not only have you survived, but you've really thrived. And I hadn't thought about it, but it's true with the severity of my brain injury. They did not expect that a 14-year-old would live, never mind be alive 53 years later. Well, I like to say that I'm tenacious. The flip side of tenacious is stubborn, and I never ever gave up. I would never give up. So I guess I was stubborn. But I was tenacious, and I would fall flat on my face, and I felt very foolish about it. But what I would do is I would pick myself up and keep on going. I would say two things. My faith in God, in my family. I can't tell you how important my family is. That there's always a future past brain injury, and that's what I would say, never give up. No matter how hard it gets, it will get better. I have a lot of deficits, but one of the things that I know I do have is I have life, and I'm very grateful. I have many things to be grateful for.